The photograph arrived on a Tuesday. Elena Marsh held the envelope in trembling hands, her daughter's name scrawled across the front in handwriting she'd spent 15 years trying to forget. Sarah stood in the doorway of their modest kitchen, her coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. "Mom? What is it?" Elena couldn't speak. Inside the envelope was a single photograph, yellowed, creased, but unmistakable. A young woman with dark hair and desperate eyes, holding a newborn baby. Elena recognized herself immediately, though she looked like a ghost of the person she'd become. And there, in the corner of the photo, barely visible but deliberate, was a date stamped in red ink, March 15, 1993. The day everything had been stolen from her. Sarah crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, her 23-year-old reflexes sharp. She plucked the photo from her mother's hands before Elena could stop her. The color drained from Sarah's face. Is this me?" Elena's throat constricted. She'd told Sarah the story in pieces over the years, carefully edited, sanitized versions that a child could digest. How they'd had to leave their old life behind. How Elena's ex-husband had been dangerous. How they'd built something new, something safe, just the two of them against the world. But she'd never told Sarah the whole truth. "We need to talk," Elena whispered, finally finding her voice. But before she could continue, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Did you get my gift? We need to settle old debts. You have 48 hours. Sarah's phone buzzed simultaneously. Her eyes widened as she read her own message. "Your mother owes me. If she won't pay, maybe you will." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elena watched her daughter's face transform, shock melting into something harder, something Elena recognized because she saw it in her own mirror every morning. The face of someone who'd been pushed too far. "Mom," Sarah said quietly, setting down her phone with deliberate care. "I think it's time you told me everything." Elena sank into a kitchen chair, the weight of 15 years of silence pressing down on her shoulder. Outside, a car engine rumbled to life, unusual for their quiet suburban street at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. Through the window, she caught a glimpse of a black sedan, tinted windows reflecting the morning sun like dead eyes. They were already being watched. "His name is Marcus Delacroix," Elena began, her voice barely above a whisper. "And he destroyed my life once before." Sarah pulled out the chair across from her mother, her journalist instincts kicking in. The same instincts that had landed her a job at the city's most prestigious investigative news outlet 6 months ago. She pulled out her phone and opened a voice memo app. "Start from the beginning," Sarah said. "And don't leave anything out this time." Elena took a shaky breath. The photograph sat between them on the table, a ghost made tangible. In it, young Elena looked directly at the camera with eyes that held both love and terror. She was holding baby Sarah in the sterile room of a private clinic, but what the photo didn't show was the man standing just outside the frame. The man who'd arranged everything. The man who'd promised to help and then twisted that promise into chains. "I was 19 when I met Marcus," Elena said. "He was 35, wealthy, connected. I was a waitress at one of his restaurants, struggling to finish community college. When I got pregnant with you, I was terrified. Your biological father, my boyfriend at the time, wanted nothing to do with us." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she didn't interrupt. "Marcus offered to help. He said he'd pay for everything, hospital bills, an apartment, childcare so I could finish school. He seemed like a guardian angel." Elena's laugh was bitter. "But nothing is free, Sarah. Nothing." "What did he want?" "At first, just my silence. He was running for city council, building his empire. He had secrets, financial crimes, connections to organized crime families, things that would have destroyed him if they came out. I worked in his restaurant, I'd seen things, overheard conversations. He needed me compliant." Elena's hands clenched into fists. "But then his demands escalated. He wanted me to help him move money, to lie to investigators, to be his accomplice. And when I refused, when I tried to leave." She couldn't finish. The memory of that night was still too vivid, Marcus's cold smile, the way he'd dangled baby Sarah just out of reach, the implicit threat that had needed no words. He blackmailed you, Sarah said flatly. He owned me. For 4 years, I did whatever he asked. I helped him launder millions. I provided alibis. I watched him destroy good people who got in his way. Elena's voice cracked. And then one day, I found out he was planning something that would have gotten people killed. A real estate scheme that involved bribing building inspectors to pass faulty construction. Hundreds of families were going to move into death traps. What did you do? I copied his files. Every transaction, every bribe, every crime. I went to the FBI. Elena met her daughter's eyes. But Marcus had people everywhere. Someone tipped him off before the agents could move. He came for us that night. Sarah's breath caught. The fire. Elena nodded. The apartment fire wasn't an accident. Marcus set it to destroy the evidence and to destroy us. But I'd prepared for something like that. I'd hidden copies of the files in 3 different locations. We barely escaped. I grabbed you and we ran. I'd been saving money in secret, cash he didn't know about. We disappeared. But the files. I sent them to the FBI from a different state, anonymously. Marcus was arrested 3 weeks later. Elena's expression hardened. But his lawyers were good. Too good. The evidence was ruled inadmissible on a technicality. He walked after 18 months in minimum security. And now he's found us, Sarah said. After 15 years of hiding, of changing our names, of looking over our shoulders. Elena's hands shook. I don't know how he found us, but he did. And he's not just coming for revenge, Sarah. Men like Marcus don't do anything without profit. He wants something. Sarah's phone buzzed again. Another message, tomorrow, 2 p.m. The old Riverside warehouse. Come alone, or your daughter's career gets interesting. I wonder what her editor would think about her real identity. Sarah showed her mother the screen. Elena felt the familiar ice of fear spreading through her chest, but then she saw something that stopped her cold. Her daughter wasn't afraid. Sarah's eyes held calculation, fury, and something else, something Elena recognized because she'd felt it growing inside herself for 15 years. The hunger for justice. Or maybe just revenge. We're not running this time, Sarah said quietly. Sarah, you don't understand what he's capable of. No, Mom. You don't understand what I'm capable of. Sarah opened her laptop and began typing rapidly. For 6 months, I'd been investigating corruption in the city's real estate development sector. Guess whose name keeps appearing in the documents? Marcus Delacroix. He's dirty again, Mom. Dirtier than before. And I've got proof. Elena stared at her daughter, seeing her with new eyes. You knew. I suspected. Some of your stories never quite added up. So I dug. And I found him. Sarah's smile was sharp. I've been building a case. I just didn't know it was personal until today. The black sedan was still outside. Elena could feel the weight of watching eyes. If we're doing this, Elena said slowly, we do it right. No half measures. No mercy. Sarah reached across the table and took her mother's hand. Together? 3 weeks ago. Sarah finally turned to face her mother. I found an old police report from the apartment fire. Your real name was redacted, but the detective's notes mentioned a child matching my age. I pulled building records, cross-referenced with birth certificates, and found the gaps where our old identities used to be. You could have asked me. Would you have told me the truth? Sarah's voice was gentle but firm. Or would you have fed me another edited version to protect me? Elena had no answer. They both knew the truth. Sarah pulled up another file, this one a personnel record. Marcus owns 12 businesses now. Restaurants, real estate development firms, a private security company. On paper, he's a legitimate businessman and philanthropist. He donates to children's hospitals. He sponsors scholarships. It's all a front, Elena said. It always was. I know. But he's learned from his mistakes. This time, he's insulated himself with layers of legitimate business. The dirty work happens through contractors and subsidiaries. Sarah's expression hardened. Which is why we can't just go to the police. His reach is too deep. We need leverage he can't escape from. Elena pulled up a chair, studying the monitors. You said you have proof. I have pieces. Emails that hint at bribery. Financial records that suggest money laundering. Witness testimony from a foreman who's too scared to go on record. Sarah leaned back, frustration evident. Individually, none of it's enough to bring him down. But if we can connect all the pieces, prove a pattern. We need the original files, Elena said quietly. Sarah's head snapped around. What? The files I sent to the FBI 15 years ago. They were ruled inadmissible because of how they were obtained, but the information was real. Bank records, recorded conversations, photographs of meetings with known criminals. Elena's mind was racing. If we could combine that old evidence with your new investigation, show that Marcus has been operating the same criminal enterprise for decades. But the FBI would have destroyed those files after the case was closed. Elena allowed herself a small smile. The FBI would have. But I kept copies. 3 sets, hidden in 3 different locations. Just in case. Sarah's eyes widened. Mom. Are you telling me that for 15 years, you've had evidence that could put Marcus away, and you never used it? I was protecting you. Elena's voice cracked. If I'd gone after him, he would have retaliated. I couldn't risk losing you. So I stayed quiet, stayed hidden, and prayed he'd forgotten about us. But he didn't forget. No. Elena pulled out her phone, checking the time. We have 46 hours. The files are hidden in 3 locations, a storage unit in Delaware, a safe deposit box in Philadelphia, and buried in a state park in Virginia. We need to retrieve all 3 sets. Sarah was already mapping routes on her computer. Delaware is closest, 4 hours round trip. Philadelphia is 5. Virginia is 7. If we split up, no. Elena's voice was sharp. We don't split up. That's what he'd expect. We stay together, we move fast, and we watch our backs. A notification pinged on Sarah's phone. Another message from Marcus, "Tick-tock, ladies. I hope you're not planning anything foolish. Remember, I have eyes everywhere." As if on cue, one of Sarah's monitors flickered. Sarah's hands flew to the keyboard, typing furiously. Someone's trying to hack into my system. Elena watched lines of code scroll across the screen. Can you stop them? Already did. But Mom. Sarah's face was pale. They got through my first 2 firewalls before I caught them. That's military-grade hacking. Or government. Marcus has both in his pocket. Elena felt the old fear creeping back, the sensation of being hunted. But this time it mixed with something else. Anger. Determination. Which means we're running out of time faster than we thought. Sarah began unplugging her equipment, working with practiced efficiency. I have backups of everything stored on encrypted cloud servers. Even if they track this location, they won't get the data. She pulled a go bag from under her desk. I've been preparing for this possibility. Elena felt a surge of pride mixed with sorrow. Her daughter had inherited her paranoia, her need to always have an escape plan. It was a terrible legacy. We need to leave now, Sarah said, slinging the bag over her shoulder. We'll head to Delaware first, get the storage unit files, then. The lights went out. In the sudden darkness, Elena's heart hammered. She heard Sarah's sharp intake of breath, the rustle of movement. Then emergency lighting kicked in, bathing the apartment in an eerie red glow. That's not a coincidence, Sarah whispered. Elena moved to the window, careful to stay out of sight. The street below was dark, the entire block had lost power. But she could see shadows moving between the parked cars. 3 figures, maybe 4, approaching the building with tactical precision. We have company, Elena said. Sarah was already at the apartment's back door, the one that led to a fire escape. This way. I have a car parked 2 blocks over under a different name. They moved quickly, silently, years of preparation and paranoia finally paying off. Elena heard heavy footsteps on the stairs below as they climbed upward to the roof. Behind them, the sound of Sarah's apartment door being kicked and echoed through the building. On the roof, the city spread out before them like a glittering circuit board. Sarah led them to a fire escape on the building's far side, one that descended into an alley. Did you plan all this? Elena asked as they climbed down. I'm your daughter, Sarah replied. Of course I did. They hit the alley at a run, moving through the maze of backstreets with the confidence of people who'd memorized escape routes. Behind them, Elena heard shouts, the sound of pursuit, but Sarah's car was exactly where she'd said it would be, a nondescript Honda with stolen plates and a full tank of gas. They were inside and moving before their pursuers rounded the corner. Who taught you all this? Elena asked as Sarah navigated the city streets with practiced ease. You did, Mom. Every time you checked the exits when we entered a restaurant. Every time you made us park facing out. Every time you had me memorize escape routes. Sarah's voice was thick with emotion. I didn't understand then. But I do now. They drove in silence for a while, making random turns, doubling back, ensuring they weren't followed. Only when they were on the highway heading toward Delaware did Elena speak again. I'm sorry, she said softly. For all of it. For the lies, for the fear, for making you grow up always looking over your shoulder. Don't apologize for keeping me alive, Sarah replied. But Mom? When this is over, and we will end this, no more secrets. Deal? Deal. They had 44 hours and 37 minutes until Marcus's deadline. The first cache of evidence was 3.5 hours away. And somewhere behind them, in the city they'd just fled, Marcus Delacroix was probably smiling. Let him smile, Elena thought. He had no idea what was coming, because this time, they weren't just running. They were arming themselves for war. The storage unit in Delaware smelled of dust and forgotten things. Elena stood before Unit 237, her hand trembling as she punched in the code, Sarah's birthdate, the one piece of their real past she'd never been able to let go. The lock clicked open with a sound that seemed to echo through the empty corridor. Wait, Sarah said, grabbing her mother's arm. What if he found this place? What if it's a trap? Elena had considered that possibility during the entire drive. But they'd watched the facility for an hour, checking for surveillance, for waiting vehicles, for any sign that Marcus's people had beaten them here. Nothing. If it's a trap, we spring it carefully, Elena said, pulling out her phone and switching on the flashlight. Stay behind me. She rolled up the metal door slowly, revealing the small 5x10 space she'd rented 15 years ago under a false name, paid for with cash, renewed annually through an anonymous mail service. Inside were 3 cardboard boxes, a duffel bag, and a small lockbox. Everything was exactly as she'd left it. No signs of disturbance. Sarah entered cautiously, her own phone light sweeping the corners. Which box? The one marked Tax Documents 2009, Elena said with a grim smile. If anyone ever found this place, that's the last thing they'd open. Sarah pulled out the box, setting it on the floor. Inside, beneath a layer of actual tax documents, were 3 thick manila envelopes sealed with evidence tape. Elena's hand shook as she opened the first one. Photographs spilled out, images of Marcus meeting with known organized crime figures, shots of briefcases full of cash changing hands, pictures of falsified inspection reports. 15 years old, but still damning. My God, Sarah breathed, documenting each piece with her phone camera. How did you get all this? I wasn't just his victim, Sarah. For 4 years, I was his accomplice. I had access to everything. Elena's voice was hollow. I hated every second of it, but I was good at it. Good enough that he trusted me. And that was his mistake. The second envelope contained financial records, wire transfers, shell company formations, bank statements showing millions moving through offshore accounts. The third held audio recordings on old cassette tapes. We'll need to digitize these, Sarah said, holding up a tape. But Mom, this is incredible. Combined with my evidence. A sound from outside the storage unit made them both freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. Elena killed her phone light and motioned for Sarah to do the same. They pressed against the wall of the unit, hidden in shadow. Through the crack of the still-open door, Elena could see a security guard passing by, flashlight sweeping lazily. They waited in darkness until the footsteps faded. "We need to move," Elena whispered. "Pack everything." They worked quickly, transferring the evidence to Sarah's backpack. Elena grabbed the lockbox. Inside was $50,000 in cash and 3 false passports, insurance policies she'd hoped never to use. "Jesus, Mom. How long have you been preparing for this?" "Since the day we ran." Elena closed the storage unit, spinning the lock. "When you live in fear long enough, you become a different person. Harder. Smarter. Or you don't survive." They were back in the car and on the road within minutes, heading north toward Philadelphia. It was 3 a.m., and the highway was nearly empty. Sarah drove while Elena went through the documents, her photographic memory from her old life coming back with painful clarity. "Here," Elena said, pulling out a financial statement. "This transaction, $3 million from one of Marcus's shell companies to a construction firm. The date is April 2009. The same month the Harbor Point development project was approved despite failing 3 separate safety inspections." Sarah glanced at the document. "I have emails from last year referencing the Harbor Point model as a template for future projects. If we can prove he's been using the same scheme for 15 years, it establishes a pattern. A criminal enterprise under the RICO statutes." Elena felt a spark of hope. "Sarah, this might actually work." The sound from outside the storage unit made them both freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. Elena killed her phone light and motioned for Sarah to do the same. They pressed against the wall of the unit, hidden in shadow. Through the crack of the still-open door, Elena could see a security guard passing by, flashlight sweeping lazily. They waited in darkness until the footsteps faded. "We need to move," Elena whispered. "Pack everything." "We need to move," Elena whispered. "Pack everything." They worked quickly, transferring the evidence to Sarah's backpack. Elena grabbed the lockbox. Inside was $50,000 in cash and 3 false passports, insurance policies she'd hoped never to use. "Jesus, Mom. How long have you been preparing for this?" "Since the day we ran." Elena closed the storage unit, spinning the lock. "When you live in fear long enough, you become a different person. Harder. Smarter. Or you don't survive." They were back in the car and on the road within minutes, heading north toward Philadelphia. It was 3 a.m., and the highway was nearly empty. Sarah drove while Elena went through the documents, her photographic memory from her old life coming back with painful clarity. "Here," Elena said, pulling out a financial statement. "This transaction, $3 million from one of Marcus's shell companies to a construction firm. The date is April 2009. The same month the Harbor Point development project was approved despite failing 3 separate safety inspections." Sarah glanced at the document. "I have emails from last year referencing the Harbor Point model as a template for future projects. If we can prove he's been using the same scheme for 15 years, it establishes a pattern. A criminal enterprise under the RICO statutes." Elena felt a spark of hope. "Sarah, this might actually work." But the hope was short-lived. Sarah's phone buzzed, another message from Marcus. "I know you went to Delaware. Did you really think I wouldn't be watching all your old hiding spots? But I'll give you credit, you were thorough." "Unfortunately, so am I. Check your email." Elena's stomach dropped. She opened her email app with dread. The message from Marcus contained a single video file. With shaking hands, Elena pressed play. The video showed Sarah's editor at the newspaper, Jack Morrison, leaving his apartment that morning. The camera followed him to his car, to the coffee shop where he always stopped, to the newspaper office. Normal routine. Except for the red laser dot that appeared on his chest in every frame. Marcus's voice narrated, "I can reach anyone, Elena. Your daughter's boss. Her colleagues. Her friends. You built a whole new life, made new connections, put down roots. That was foolish. Roots can be torn up." The video ended with a still image of Jack Morrison's family, his wife and 2 young daughters. Sarah had pulled over to the shoulder, her face ashen. "He's threatening innocent people." "That's what he does," Elena said, fury and fear warring inside her. "He finds what you love and he threatens to destroy it. We should call the police." "And tell them what? That a successful businessman is committing vague threats? By the time they took us seriously, people would be dead." Elena forced herself to think clearly. "This is why he's untouchable, Sarah. Not just because he's careful, but because he's willing to do anything. No conscience. No limits." They sat in silence on the dark highway, emergency flashers blinking. Around them, the night seemed to press in from all sides. "What did you do?" Sarah asked quietly. "Back then, when he threatened you like this?" "I did what he wanted. Every time." Elena's voice was barely audible. "Because I believed I had no choice. Because I was alone and terrified and I thought I was protecting you." "But you're not alone anymore," Sarah said, meeting her mother's eyes. "And neither am I." Sarah pulled back onto the highway, accelerating. "We keep going. We get all the evidence. And then we don't go to the police." "What?" "Think about it, Mom. Marcus has cops on his payroll. Maybe FBI agents. Too, that's how your original case fell apart. The system failed you once. We can't trust it to work now." Sarah's jaw was set with determination. "But I'm a journalist. I know how to break a story so big that not even Marcus can suppress it. We go public. Every news outlet simultaneously. Print, TV, digital. We bury him in so much exposure that his own people abandon him to save themselves." Elena felt something shift in her chest, the last vestiges of fear transforming into cold, calculated rage. "He'll retaliate. Let him try. Once the story breaks, every move he makes will be scrutinized. He'll be paralyzed." Sarah's smile was sharp. "And while he's trying to manage the fallout, we'll be ready for phase 2. "Phase 2? Mom, destroying his reputation isn't enough. We need to dismantle his entire operation. Seize his assets. Send him and everyone who works for him to prison for the rest of their lives." Sarah's voice was steel. "You taught me to survive. Now let me teach you how to fight back." They drove through the night toward Philadelphia, toward the second cache of evidence. Behind them, somewhere in the darkness, Marcus's people were hunting. Ahead, the deadline ticked closer with every passing mile. But Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in 15 years, hope. Because her daughter was right. They weren't alone. They weren't helpless. And this time, they had something Marcus didn't expect. They had each other, and they had nothing left to lose. The prey had become predators. And predators knew how to hunt. The safe deposit box in Philadelphia should have been routine. But when Elena and Sarah walked into the bank at 8 a.m., chosen specifically because Marcus would expect them to move at night, they found 2 police officers waiting in the lobby. "Morning, officers," Sarah said smoothly, her journalist smile in place. "Is there a problem?" The older cop, badge reading Martinez, studied them with tired eyes. "We got a call about suspicious activity. Anonymous tip said someone might try to access a specific safe deposit box using false identification." Elena's blood turned to ice. Of course Marcus had found this location too. Of course he'd positioned people to intercept them. "Well, we're just here to access my mother's box," Sarah said, maintaining her composure. "Everything's legitimate. Would you like to see her ID?" Martinez looked uncertain. His partner, younger and more aggressive, stepped forward. "Which box number?" This was the trap. If Elena gave the wrong answer, or if the box had been flagged, 2847, Elena said, praying. Her voice sounded steadier than she felt. I've had it for 12 years. That was true. She'd moved the contents here from another location 7 years ago, renting it under a different false identity but one with a longer paper trail. Martinez radioed something Elena couldn't quite hear. The wait felt eternal. All right, Martinez said finally. But we'll need to observe, make sure everything's in order. They had no choice. Sarah and Elena followed a bank manager to the vault, the two officers trailing behind. Elena's mind raced. The documents in this box were even more damaging than the Delaware cache detailed records of murders Marcus had ordered, payoffs to corrupt officials, evidence that would put him away forever. If the officers saw those documents, they'd seize them as evidence. And in Marcus's pocket courts, that evidence would disappear just like it had 15 years ago. The bank manager retrieved the box, a large one, and led them to a private viewing room. The officers positioned themselves by the door. Take your time, Martinez said, though his stance suggested they had anything but time. Elena opened the box with shaking hands. Inside was exactly what she expected: thick folders, USB drives, and, sitting on top like a bomb waiting to explode, a letter with her real name on it in Marcus's handwriting. Sarah saw it the same moment Elena did. The letter hadn't been here before. Marcus or his people had gotten into the box somehow, left a message. How long had he known about this location? Elena picked up the letter with numb fingers and unfolded it. Only 3 lines, handwritten. Elena, you were always thorough, I'll give you that. But you made one mistake. You had something I wanted then, and you have something I want now. 24 hours. My terms. Or everyone you've ever spoken to in this city dies. Sarah read over her mother's shoulder. Her face went pale, but her voice was steady when she spoke. Officers, my mother needs a moment. She just received some difficult news. Martinez softened slightly. Take the time you need. When the door closed partway, giving them a moment of semi-privacy, Sarah leaned close. We're being recorded. The room, our phones, everything. Don't say anything specific. Elena nodded, her heart pounding. She quickly shuffled through the box's contents, memorizing what was there. The financial records she expected. The photographs. But also her blood ran cold: new items that hadn't been here before. Recent photographs of Sarah. Of Elena. Of Jack Morrison and his family. Of a dozen other people, all with red X's marked over their faces. Targets. All of them. We need to take everything, Elena whispered. We can't. Not with them watching. Sarah was already thinking, planning. Elena could see it in her daughter's eyes. But we don't need the originals. Sarah pulled out her phone, angling herself to block the officer's view. I'm going to pretend to comfort you. You're going to photograph every single document in this box. My phone's camera is high resolution and uploads to an encrypted server in real time. Even if they take my phone, the images will be safe. It was brilliant and risky in equal measure. Elena nodded. For the next 20 minutes, Sarah created a convincing display of comforting her distraught mother while Elena rapidly photographed every document, every photograph, every piece of evidence. Her hands shook, but the camera lens was steady. Page after page, image after image, uploading silently to Sarah's secure server. When they were done, Elena carefully returned everything to the box except Marcus's letter. That, she pocketed. Thank you, Elena said to the officers as they emerged. I apologize for the emotional display. Bad news from home. Martinez nodded sympathetically. His partner still looked suspicious but said nothing. They were back in the car 10 minutes later, driving in silence until they were several blocks away. Pull over, Elena said suddenly. Sarah found a parking spot in front of a 24-hour diner. Inside, over coffee neither of them could taste, they finally spoke freely. He's been inside our security for longer than we thought, Sarah said, her voice tight with controlled fury. He knew about both locations. He probably knows about Virginia too. Which means he's been toying with us, Elena replied. He could have taken us at any time. He's making this a game. No. Sarah pulled out her laptop, accessing the uploaded photographs. He's making a mistake. He's so confident in his control that he's getting careless. Look. She zoomed in on one of the photographs Elena had taken, a recent image of Marcus meeting with someone in a parking garage. I recognize this location. It's the garage under the Riverside development site. And look at the date stamp. This photo is from 3 days ago, so someone is still actively documenting Marcus's crimes. Someone on the inside. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard. The photo quality, the angle. This was taken with a professional camera by someone who knew exactly where to position themselves. Marcus didn't plant this. Someone else did. Elena leaned closer, studying the image. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, was a reflection in a car window. Another person, watching Marcus's meeting. We have an unknown ally, Elena said slowly. Or Marcus has an enemy. Sarah was already running facial recognition on the person Marcus was meeting with. Either way, it's leverage. If we can figure out who took this photo and why, we might be able to. Her laptop screen went black. No, Sarah breathed, frantically typing. But nothing responded. The screen remained dead, and then, horrifyingly, text began appearing on its own. Nice try, Sarah. But I told you, I have eyes everywhere. You have 22 hours now. Tick-tock. The laptop died completely. Sarah stared at it in disbelief. He just killed my computer remotely. That she looked at her mother with dawning horror. Mom, if he can do that, if he has that level of access, the photographs you uploaded, Elena said, understanding flooding through her. Can he access those? My encryption should be solid, but... Sarah's face was ash-gray. If he has government-level hacking tools, if he has the NSA or military-grade software. They sat in frozen silence, the terrible possibility hanging between them. Everything they'd collected, both the old evidence and the new, might already be compromised. We need to get to Virginia, Elena said finally. The last cache. And then we need to move faster than we've been moving. How? He's anticipating every move. Elena's mind was racing, 15 years of survival instincts firing all at once. We stop running from him. We walk right into his trap. What? The deadline he gave us, 24 hours, now 22. The meeting at the Riverside warehouse. He expects us to either show up desperate and broken, or to keep running and let him destroy everyone we care about. Elena's voice hardened. We do neither. We show up on our terms, with everything we have, and we burn his empire to the ground in front of him. Sarah stared at her mother as if seeing her for the first time. You want to confront him directly. I want to end this. Once and for all. No more hiding. No more fear. Elena pulled out her phone, ignoring the possibility that Marcus might be listening. Let him listen. We get the Virginia evidence, we compile everything, and we set up a dead man switch. If anything happens to us, if we don't check in every hour, everything goes public. Every news outlet, every law enforcement agency, social media, everything simultaneously. That's mutually assured destruction, Elena finished. It's the only language men like Marcus understand. We can't beat him by being smarter or more careful. We beat him by being willing to sacrifice everything. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she opened a new app on her phone, one that had survived whatever kill switch Marcus had used on her laptop. I can set that up. I have contacts at every major news outlet. We create automated emails, delayed posts, timed releases. If we don't stop them, they trigger automatically. How long? Give me 4 hours. 6 to be safe. Sarah met her mother's eyes. But Mom, if we do this, there's no going back. We're putting targets on our backs forever. Even if Marcus goes to prison, his organization will want revenge. Then they'll have to get in line, Elena said coldly. Because I've spent 15 years being afraid. I'm done. They left the diner and drove toward Virginia, toward the final piece of the puzzle. The sun was rising over the highway, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Behind them, Marcus Delacroix was probably celebrating his apparent victory. He had no idea that the prey he'd been hunting had grown claws. The Virginia State Park was exactly as Elena remembered: dense forest, hiking trails, and a small creek that wound through the trees like a silver ribbon. She led Sarah off the main path, following a route she'd memorized 15 years ago. 300 paces north from the park entrance. Turn east at the split oak. Follow the creek until the distinctive rock formation that looked like a sleeping giant. Here, Elena said, stopping at an unremarkable patch of ground beneath a cluster of pine trees. You buried it? Sarah asked, already pulling a collapsible shovel from her backpack. Metal detector proof, waterproof case, buried 4 feet down. Elena took the shovel. I'll dig. You watch for anyone following us. The first strike of the shovel into earth felt symbolic, unearthing the past, exposing what had been hidden. Elena dug with steady determination, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool morning air. 3 feet down, her shovel hit something solid. Got it, she breathed. Together, they unearthed a large waterproof case, sealed with combination locks. Elena's fingers trembled as she entered the code, the date she'd first held Sarah, the first time she'd understood what it meant to have something worth protecting. The case opened with a hiss of equalized pressure. Inside were documents, yes, financial records, recorded conversations, photographs. But there was also something else. Something Elena had almost forgotten she'd hidden here. A loaded handgun. Sarah stared at it. Mom? I told you. I prepared for everything. Elena checked the weapon, still functional after all these years, ammunition still good. She'd maintained it obsessively before burying it, wrapping it in oilcloth, sealing it in its own protective case within the larger one. Have you ever? Sarah couldn't finish the question. No. But Marcus taught me how to shoot. He wanted all his people armed, just in case. Elena's laugh was bitter. Just another way he made me complicit. She tucked the gun into her waistband, hidden under her jacket. Sarah looked like she wanted to protest, but didn't. They were repacking the documents when Sarah's phone buzzed. Not a message this time, a call from an unknown number. Sarah answered on speaker. Hello? Miss Marsh, or should I say, Sarah Delacroix? The voice was male, older, unfamiliar. My name is Raymond Chin. I used to be Marcus Delacroix's accountant. I believe we have a mutual interest in seeing him brought to justice. Elena and Sarah exchanged glances. This could be a trap. Why should we trust you? Sarah asked carefully. Because I'm the one who's been documenting his recent crimes. I'm the one who planted those additional photographs in your mother's safe deposit box. Chen's voice was weary. I've been trapped in Marcus's organization for 8 years. He has my family under surveillance, threatened to kill them if I ever tried to leave or talk. But recent events have made me realize that staying silent is just as dangerous as speaking out. What recent events? Elena asked. The Riverside collapse. 3 men died because Marcus cut corners to maximize profit. I helped him hide the money trail. Chen's voice cracked. I have a son their age. I can't keep doing this. I can't keep being part of this. If you want to help us, we need everything you have, Sarah said. Every document, every file, every communication. I have it all. 20 years of financial crimes, documented in excruciating detail. But I need protection. For me and my family. And I need assurance that when this story breaks, you won't burn me alongside Marcus. Elena understood leverage when she heard it. You want immunity. I want to not die, Chin corrected. Marcus is planning something big tomorrow. There's more, Chin continued. Your original FBI case, the one from 15 years ago? I found the records. Marcus didn't just pay off lawyers. He paid off the judge and 2 FBI agents. That's why the evidence was thrown out. He's been planning this revenge for years, waiting for the perfect moment. Elena felt cold rage spreading through her chest. How do we know you're real? That this isn't Marcus using you to draw us out? Check your email. I just sent you a sample Marcus's complete financial records for the Riverside project, including the specific bribes paid to bypass safety inspections. If that's not enough proof, I don't know what is. Sarah was already checking. Her eyes widened. Mom, this is real. These are the exact records I've been trying to get for months. Bank transfers, wire confirmations, everything. Meet us, Elena said suddenly. Face to face. 3 hours from now. We'll give you the location 1 hour before. Agreed. But Miss Marsh, we're running out of time. Marcus's timeline is accelerating. Whatever you're planning, it needs to happen soon. The call ended. Elena and Sarah stood in the forest clearing, surrounded by evidence of crimes spanning decades. Do we trust him? Sarah asked. No. But we don't have to trust him to use him. Elena was already thinking 3 moves ahead. If he's legitimate, he gives us the final piece we need. If he's a trap, we'll be ready. They hiked back to the car, moving quickly. Elena felt the weight of the gun against her spine, a reminder that this had moved beyond games and strategy. This was now about survival. In the car, Sarah worked on her laptop, a backup machine she'd had hidden in the trunk. I'm setting up the dead man switch now. Every hour, I'll need to input a code. If I miss 2 check-ins consecutively, everything releases. Every document, every recording, every photograph. Sent to 200 journalists, law enforcement agencies, and posted across social media platforms. How do we prove it to Marcus? That we have this capability? Sarah's smile was grim. We demonstrate. I'll send him a sample packet right now, just enough to show him what we have, along with a message explaining our insurance policy. She typed rapidly, then hit send. Done. Now we wait for him to realize he can't just kill us anymore. The response came within minutes. A video call request from Marcus Delacroix himself. Elena's hand instinctively went to the gun at her back. Answer it. Sarah accepted the call. Marcus's face filled the screen, older than Elena remembered, gray at the temples, but with the same cold eyes that had haunted her nightmares for 15 years. Elena, he said, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. It's been too long. Not long enough, Elena replied. Marcus laughed. I see you've found some courage. And your daughter, so much like you, Elena. Smart, resourceful. A shame, really. Cut the act, Marcus, Sarah interrupted. You got our package. You know what we have. You know what happens if you touch us. Oh, I know what you think you have. Marcus leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. But let me explain something about leverage, young Sarah. Real power isn't about who has the most evidence or the best story. It's about who's willing to do what needs to be done. His expression hardened. You release that information, yes, I'll face legal consequences. Probably prison, though my lawyers are very good. But before the first news story even finishes uploading, 23 people you care about will be dead. Your editor and his family. Your mother's coworkers at the library. That barista you smile at every morning. The elderly neighbor who waters your plants. He pulled up a tablet, showing them a grid of surveillance photographs. Elena recognized every face, people from their new lives, innocent connections they'd made over the years. I have teams positioned at every location. 1 word from me, and they act. And if we refuse? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Then everyone dies. Including you. And I disappear. I have resources you can't imagine, new identities, offshore accounts, protection in countries that don't extradite. I'll vanish, and I'll spend the rest of my life very wealthy and very free. Marcus leaned forward. The only question is how many bodies you want on your conscience. The call ended. Sarah and Elena sat in stunned silence. He's calling our bluff, Sarah finally said. He knows we won't release the information if it means killing innocent people. He's right, Elena whispered. I can't. I won't have their deaths on my hands. But even as she said it, her mind was working. There had to be another way. There had to be a solution that didn't involve surrender or mass murder. We meet with Chen, Elena said suddenly. Maybe he knows something we don't. And then we do something Marcus won't expect. What? Elena met her daughter's eyes, seeing her own desperation reflected there. We give him exactly what he wants. But not in the way he expects. They had 18 hours until Marcus's deadline. 18 hours to turn the hunter into the hunted. 18 hours to save 23 innocent lives and themselves. The game had changed. The stakes were higher than ever. But Elena Marsh had been underestimated before. It was time to remind Marcus Delacroix why that had been his first mistake. Raymond Chen looked nothing like Elena had imagined. He was small, nervous, with thick glasses and trembling hands. They met in a crowded shopping mall food court, public enough to be safe, crowded enough to make surveillance difficult. Chen sat across from them, a weathered briefcase clutched to his chest like a shield. I'd been with Marcus for 8 years, Chen began without preamble. I started as a legitimate accountant. I didn't know what I was getting into until it was too late. By then, he had leverage. Chen opened the briefcase with shaking hands. Inside were USB drives, folders, and a laptop. Everything is here. 20 years of financial crimes. Money laundering, bribery, fraud, murder for hire payments. I documented it all. Elena scanned through the documents. It was devastating, more comprehensive than anything she'd collected 15 years ago. Why now? Why risk everything to help us? Because I'm dying, Chen said simply. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months, maybe less. I've spent 8 years being a coward, protecting my family by enabling a monster. I won't spend my last months that way. Sarah looked stricken. Your family is already safe. I moved them to my brother's house in Canada 3 days ago. Told Marcus it was a family emergency. By the time he realizes they're gone for good, this will all be over. Chen's smile was sad. One way or another. Elena felt a surge of respect for this small, frightened man who'd found courage at the end of his life. Marcus threatened to kill 23 people if we release this information. Do you know about those surveillance teams? I processed the payments. They're real. Ex-military contractors, mercenaries. Marcus has them positioned and ready. Chen pulled up a file on his laptop. But there's something Marcus doesn't know. I've been documenting his communications with these teams. I have recordings of him giving explicit orders to kill civilians. That's conspiracy to commit murder, federal charges that can't be bargained away. But if we release the information, those teams still act, Sarah said. Unless they're arrested first. Chen pulled up another file, addresses, photographs, names. I know where every team is positioned. I know their identities. If we could somehow get this information to law enforcement simultaneously with releasing the main evidence, Elena's mind was racing. We'd need people we could trust. Law enforcement who aren't on Marcus's payroll. I might have that, Sarah said slowly. She pulled out her phone, scrolling through contacts. Jack Morrison, my editor. Before he was a journalist, he was an FBI agent. He left the bureau because of corruption, but he still has contacts. People who actually care about justice. Can we trust him? Elena asked. Marcus has him under surveillance. Which is exactly why this might work. Sarah was already typing a message. Marcus expects us to avoid anyone he's watching. If we bring Jack in, Marcus won't see it coming. Within 30 minutes, Jack Morrison was sitting with them in a back corner of the food court. He was in his 50s, graying and solid, with the bearing of someone who'd seen too much and still chose to care. Sarah had filled him in on the basics. Now they showed him everything: Chen's documents, Elena's evidence, the complete picture of Marcus Delacroix's criminal empire. Jack was silent for a long time after reviewing it all. Finally, he spoke. I left the FBI because of people like Marcus. People who could buy their way out of justice. I became a journalist because I thought the power of the press could do what the law couldn't. He met Elena's eyes. But I still have friends in the bureau. Good people who never sold out. If we do this right, we can hit Marcus from every direction at once. We have less than 16 hours, Elena said. Then we'd better move fast. Jack was already on his phone. I'm calling in every favor I've earned in 30 years. We'll need tactical teams for the arrest operations, federal prosecutors who can't be bought, and enough media coverage that Marcus can't make this disappear. The plan came together rapidly. Chen provided the locations of Marcus's mercenary teams. Jack coordinated with FBI agents he trusted, setting up simultaneous raids. Sarah worked on the media release, preparing packages for 200 news outlets worldwide. But Elena kept thinking about Marcus's threat, his cold certainty that he'd win. There was something they were missing, some angle he'd covered that they hadn't considered. The warehouse meeting, Elena said suddenly. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Marcus expects us to show up with the evidence. What if that's not just about destroying the documents? What if it's a trap for everyone we're bringing into this? The table went silent. He could have explosives planted, Sarah said, understanding dawning. Take out us, the evidence, and anyone who comes to arrest him all at once. Or he has a contingency plan, Jack added. If he senses things going wrong, he triggers something catastrophic. Marcus didn't become untouchable by being predictable, Chen was nodding. He's been moving large sums of money in the last week. Millions to offshore accounts. And there were payments to a demolition company supposedly for the Riverside cleanup, but the amounts were excessive. He's planning to destroy the warehouse, Elena said with certainty. With us inside. The realization was chilling. Marcus wasn't planning to regain control of them, he was planning a murder-suicide that would eliminate everyone who threatened him. So we don't show up, Sarah said. No, Elena countered. We do show up. But not the way he expects. She outlined her plan quickly, urgently. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal. But it was the only way to ensure Marcus went down without taking innocent people with him. You're using yourself as bait, Jack said flatly. I've been his victim for 15 years. I'm going to be his downfall. Elena's voice was steel. But I won't be alone. And I won't be helpless. The next 14 hours were a controlled chaos of preparation. Jack's FBI contacts moved into position, setting up surveillance on Marcus's mercenary teams. Federal prosecutors were briefed, warrants prepared. Sarah finalized the media packages, ready to release at the push of a button. But Elena kept thinking about Marcus's threat, his cold certainty that he'd win. There was something they were missing, some angle he'd covered that they hadn't considered. The warehouse meeting, Elena said suddenly. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Marcus expects us to show up with the evidence. What if that's not just about destroying the documents? What if it's a trap for everyone we're bringing into this? The table went silent. He could have explosives planted, Sarah said, understanding dawning. Take out us, the evidence, and anyone who comes to arrest him all at once. Or he has a contingency plan, Jack added. If he senses things going wrong, he triggers something catastrophic. Marcus didn't become untouchable by being predictable, Chen was nodding. He's been moving large sums of money in the last week. Millions to offshore accounts. And there were payments to a demolition company supposedly for the Riverside cleanup, but the amounts were excessive. He's planning to destroy the warehouse, Elena said with certainty. With us inside. The realization was chilling. Marcus wasn't planning to regain control of them, he was planning a murder-suicide that would eliminate everyone who threatened him. So we don't show up, Sarah said. No, Elena countered. We do show up. But not the way he expects. She outlined her plan quickly, urgently. It was dangerous, possibly suicidal. But it was the only way to ensure Marcus went down without taking innocent people with him. You're using yourself as bait, Jack said flatly. I've been his victim for 15 years. I'm going to be his downfall. Elena's voice was steel. But I won't be alone. And I won't be helpless. The next 14 hours were a controlled chaos of preparation. Jack's FBI contacts moved into position, setting up surveillance on Marcus's mercenary teams. Federal prosecutors were briefed, warrants prepared. Sarah finalized the media packages, ready to release at the push of a button. You think you've won? You think the explosion interrupted him. But it wasn't the warehouse that exploded, it was Marcus's escape vehicle outside, the one he'd planned to use after killing Elena and destroying the evidence. FBI tactical teams had found it, disabled it, and in the process triggered its explosive self-destruct. The blast shook the warehouse. Marcus stumbled, his gun wavering. Elena moved. She'd been practicing the motion in her mind for hours. The gun from her waistband, the one she'd buried 15 years ago, came up smoothly. She didn't aim for center mass like Marcus had taught her. She aimed for his shoulder, the same shoulder he'd broken when he'd beaten her the night of the fire. The shot rang out. Marcus went down, howling in pain. FBI agents swarmed into the warehouse from every entrance. Elena dropped her gun, raising her hands even though she knew Jack had already explained her role in this operation. AS agents secured Marcus, reading him his rights through his screams of rage and pain. Elena felt something she hadn't experienced in 15 years. Peace. Sarah burst through the door moments later, ignoring the agents trying to stop her, and threw her arms around her mother. They held each other as Marcus was dragged away, still screaming threats, still promising revenge he'd never be able to deliver. It's over, Sarah whispered. Not yet, Elena replied. She pulled out her phone, where Sarah's media package waited. Now we finish it. Together, mother and daughter pressed send. The story broke across every major news outlet simultaneously. Marcus Delacroix's empire, exposed in excruciating detail. 20 years of crime, documented and undeniable. By the time the sun set, his name was trending worldwide not as a successful businessman, but as one of the most prolific white-collar criminals in American history. His mercenary teams were arrested without incident, their orders intercepted before they could harm anyone. His business associates began cooperating immediately, desperate to cut deals. His offshore accounts were frozen. His properties seized. Marcus Delacroix's kingdom collapsed in a single day. 3 months later, Elena and Sarah stood outside a federal courthouse, watching Marcus being led inside in chains. The trial was expected to last months, but the outcome wasn't in doubt. The evidence was overwhelming, the witnesses numerous, the charges damning. Marcus caught sight of them as he was led up the courthouse steps. For a moment, their eyes met. Elena saw the hatred there, the impotent rage, the disbelief that he'd been beaten by the people he'd once controlled. Elena smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Then she took her daughter's hand, and they walked away. Behind them, Marcus was swallowed by the courthouse, by the justice system he'd tried so hard to corrupt. Raymond Chen didn't live to see the end of the trial. He died peacefully in hospice 2 months after the arrests, surrounded by his family, finally free of the burden he'd carried. Jack Morrison won a Pulitzer Prize for his coverage of the case. He offered Sarah a promotion to senior investigative reporter. She accepted. Elena went back to her quiet job at the library. She kept her new name, her new life. But the nightmares stopped. The constant vigilance eased. For the first time in 15 years, she could walk down the street without looking over her shoulder. One evening, 6 months after Marcus's conviction, Sarah came over for dinner. They cooked together in Elena's kitchen, the same kitchen where they'd received Marcus's first photograph, where this had all begun. I've been thinking, Sarah said as they chopped vegetables. About writing a book. About everything that happened. Not just the crime story, but the human story. About survival, about fighting back, about a mother and daughter against impossible odds. Elena considered this. Once, the idea would have terrified her, putting their story out there, making themselves visible again. But that was the old Elena, the one who'd spent 15 years hiding. What would you call it? She asked. Sarah smiled. Blood ties. Because that's what saved us in the end. Not evidence or strategy or even justice. Just the bond between a mother and daughter who refused to let anyone break them. Elena put down her knife and pulled her daughter into a hug. "Write it," she said. "Tell the world what it really means to fight back. Tell them that victims can become victors. Tell them that sometimes, the hunted become the hunters. And that revenge," Sarah added softly, "can also be justice." They finished making dinner together, talking and laughing, planning Sarah's book and Elena's quiet future. Outside, the sun set over their small suburban neighborhood, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in a federal prison, Marcus Delacroix sat in a cell, his empire destroyed, his freedom gone forever. And in a modest kitchen filled with the smell of home cooking and the sound of laughter, two women who'd survived his cruelty sat down to eat. They had won. Not just the battle, but the war. Not just justice, but peace. Their revenge was complete. Their story was over. Their lives, finally, could begin.